At the end of this TED Talk, you're going to be able to live forever and change the world. Not only that, you're going to be able to give this ability to others as well. I heard that. Somebody said finally in the front row. Yes, this is the one you've been waiting for. Now, you don't know my grandma, Grandma Kay. She is not famous. She never owned a business or wrote a book. She's lived a fairly simple life as a mother of 5 and housewife, almost entirely in rural Nevada. And yet, she has changed the lives of every single person in this room. She hasn't aged a day in over 30 years, and she's the one who taught me how to live forever. I'm going to come back to her. First, I'm a storyteller. Since I was 8 years old, I've dedicated most all of my life to the professional pursuit of storytelling in many forms. As a street performing juggler, stage magician, theater, television, film actor, writer, director, producer, photographer, voiceover recording artist for TV, radio, animation, and video games. I can tell you that the pursuit of storytelling as a profession is a deeply personal and never-ending affair. To get it right, to chase the carrot of perfection in storytelling, an endlessly frustrating and elusive task. Like Michelangelo's sculptures that he believed existed already inside the marble, waiting to be set free by his chisel, great stories are truly everywhere, just waiting to be told. A storyteller's job is to find it, focus it, and communicate it with merciless ferocity in the medium of his or her expertise and set it free into the world. To tell story is to be human. It's a fundamental truth to our nature. It's in our DNA. Stories awaken our curiosity, our fears. They teach, entertain, and inspire us. Stories, not raw data or objective facts, drive industries, education, architectural design, political platforms, social and technological progress. You see, we harnessed fire, and from the first moment that shadow was cast upon a cave wall, we were hooked on storytelling, man. Hundreds of thousands of years later, that flickering cave fire would evolve to light actors on a Greek stage, reciting dramas that would captivate audiences. And still, driven to tell stories to larger audiences, fire became the grinding of a printing press, the crackle of radio waves, the artificial light that now casts our stories onto modern-day cave walls. Throughout our history, we have poured massive amounts of time, energy, and resources into creating more and more powerful ways to tell stories, inventing storytelling technologies as numerous as the tales themselves, and always evolving those tools with pure, consistent innovation. Storytelling is not something we do, it's who we are. What I think is so interesting about the invention of storytelling is that we are all instinctually great at it, born masters of it. Now, I know when I say those words, some people in this audience are thinking to themselves, no, that's not me. That's not me. I can't tell a good story to save my life. Seriously, I was at my friend's wedding one time, the microphone was passed to me. My heart could be heard beating somewhere in the distance. Time seemed to slow down. The floor felt as quicksand. My stomach churning like a washing machine on a top-heavy boat in the ocean during a typhoon, helmed by a nearsighted captain with one eye. Guess what? That's a story. That storyteller voice inside your head, whatever it's saying, is the most unpredictable, most unruly, most irreverent, most imaginative storyteller you know. That little voice inside your head is so damn good, so sly at storytelling, you believe every single one of the words of the stories it tells you sometimes, even when you know they're not true. That's how good of a storyteller you actually really are. You see, our brains are wired to light up, to absorb well-told stories, even badly told stories, readily, perhaps too readily, than even recognizing clear, objective facts. We want the story. It's been shown in neurological research. We actually get more emotional satisfaction out of hoping that a story is true than actually being presented with the truth of the matter. Think magic or myths. See, when the legend becomes fact, print the legend. For a story to exist, you have to have only two things. You have to have the source, of the information, living or inanimate, and you have to have the receiver. You have to have the audience. The audience is what brings a story into being. As in, if a story was told in the forest and no one was around to hear it, read it, or see it, would the story have... Shit! Fuck, come here.
Don't touch me!
Stop. I know it's too late, but I get it now.
And finally, there was silence.
See? You are all amazing storytellers. Right now, you have all kinds of individual and unique comedies and dramas and soap operas playing out inside your head. All the possible pasts. All the possible pasts these two might have had. You told lifetimes of story at lightning speed just then. Love, hate, sex, scorn, passion, revenge, out of pure, natural impulse. Do you see how uniquely powerful that is? You were doing it. Some of you were doing it before you realized you were doing it. Some of you even did it after you suspected this to be staged. That's how much of a storyteller junkie you are. There are three sides to every story. Your side, my side, and the truth, and nobody's lying. Story is so seductive, so comforting, so alluring. In the absence of information, we reach for it. Like a life preserver on the dark, choppy seas of the unknown, it gives us a sense of control over the otherwise completely uncontrollable. Think conspiracy theories. Our communications with one another, whether an intimate whisper or a speech heard around the world, is seldom, if ever, relayed or absorbed objectively. Those who tell the stories rule society. Stories fuel wars and unify nations. Stories inspire art, creativity, and love. Stories crush empires. Stories serve to preserve heritage, tradition, and culture. They also maintain divisions that justify hate, discrimination, and the taking of life. Which brings up a really important distinction. A story is meaningless until it is believed. There's a great many of us on this planet that find it more natural to form our beliefs, our morals, our visions of the world on stories told thousands of years ago by much more primitive people rather than on that of accumulated knowledge since then. Modern day observations, scientific discoveries, global facts. Why? Well, facts suck. Facts are not stories. Facts are, get out of here with your actual factual, facty facts. We're emotional creatures. Facts don't affect. It's no coincidence. If history were taught in the form of stories, it would never be forgotten. It's no coincidence that some of our most well-known scientists are some of our best science storytellers. When you think of Sir Isaac Newton, what's the first thing that pops into your mind, or rather hits you in the head? That apple falling from the tree, right? Did it happen? Yeah, kind of, maybe, sort of. Does it matter? No. That's what you remember, and it's important. Albert Einstein explained his work through very imaginative and creative stories, with clocks, trains, and spaceships. Stephen Hawking, a master of creative descriptions, often injects his English sense of humor, snark, and straight-up sass into his writings. I just called Stephen Hawking sassy during a TED Talk. Sassy Stevie. Carl Sagan, a poet of science. Neil deGrasse Tyson, my generation's Carl Sagan, beautifully tells the stories of science in a way that is accessible and, most importantly, inspirational to anyone from any background. I started as a juggler. Stephen Hawking, Sassy Stevie, theoretical physicist. You are a blank. We all have the ability to harness this power for better communication. Why is it so important to understand storytelling as a communication tool? Because I believe this. There is no single device with greater capability to create or destroy than that of a story well told. Stories create reality. Change the story, change the world. The universe is made of stories, not of atoms. When you start to realize how much of this world is built up and torn down just on stories, it can get really overwhelming really quickly. What is real? What is truth? Does truth exist? Can I believe this story over that story? Am I lying to myself? Am I being manipulated? For good or for bad, for as long as we are human, we are not going to stop telling stories. That little voice inside your head is always going to be there. And so too will be all of the people in this world that want to affect you in some way with their stories. The point is not to avoid or stop storytelling. That's impossible. The point is to change how we listen, how we tell these stories, understanding, appreciating that the impact of a single story can be so lasting. It should be told, listened to, and repeated with very conscious responsibility. I want to tell you a very personal story about how lasting the impact of a single story can be. So, from the age of 9 to 17, I was a professional juggler. And I get hired to work at birthday parties and state fairs and street performing and casino showrooms and special events. It was so much fun. I loved it. It was great. I told these comedic and dramatic stories through these physical feats of juggling set to music, mostly movie soundtracks that I pulled. And I had so much fun. And for a kid from Reno, Nevada, I'd make a decent amount of money at it too. I was able to pay for a Ferrari in cash. It was 1/10 scaled and remote controlled, but still, Toys R Us, I will not be financing. Boom! And my dad helped me save it throughout my teen years, so that when I decided that I wanted to go off to Hollywood to make movies, I had what seemed like a fortune at the time to a recent high school graduate, and more of a Happy Meal prize to the entertainment industry in the Los Angeles apartment market. In that first year, and for a little while before I broke into TV and film to be able, I couldn't support myself. I was having a hard time getting my feet underneath me, and I was struggling. And my dad would help me as best he could. He would send me money, and he would help me with things like rent and groceries, and I hated it. I mean, I was okay with it, but I mean, I hated it. It actually made me feel bad. I'm not kidding. Like every single time he helped me out, I had it that my story was that I had it that I was failing somehow, that I wasn't able to go after my own dream, that I wasn't hacking it, and I wasn't capturing this, and I actually felt kind of bad and depressed every single time he sent me money. Some parents in this audience that want to adopt me right now. But it's true. It was a new mindset for me, and it was a struggle. And I told my dad this, and he told me this story, I think to give me a little perspective. He told me about how in his teens and early 20s, he worked a whole bunch of odd jobs around Las Vegas. And amazing stories, right? And he saved up his money for college tuition and ultimately to go to law school. You see, my dad, he didn't come from money. Far from it. He had to hustle and work for every dollar and every break that he got to change his stars. And his mom, my Grandma Kay, helped him save it throughout his teens and 20s. So when it came time, he decided he wanted to go off to California to go to law school. He had what seemed like a fortune at the time to a recent college graduate, more of a Happy Meal prize to the years of law school ahead in the Sacramento apartment market. In that first year, he really began to struggle. He had to go on food stamps. He worked at the 24-hour Denny's serving tables, working the graveyard shift all during the night, only to every day go to school all day during the day to become an attorney. And he was fighting not to have to go back to Vegas and quit. Back in Las Vegas, things were also still very much a struggle for Grandma Kay. Recently divorced from a wildly abusive husband, on her own, still raising Chucky, the last of 5 kids, fighting to make ends meet. As a single working mom, serving cocktails at the Riviera on the Las Vegas Strip, as a single working mom in 1970s Las Vegas. And still, every single day that she came home, my Grandma Kay sat down at the kitchen table and she'd count out her tip money for that shift. And she'd first put aside all the money that she knew that she needed for her and little Chucky just to get by. And with whatever could possibly be left over, she'd put that cash and those coins into an envelope and send them to my dad, persistent to ease a son's struggles and support his ambitions in any way that she could. The first envelope my dad received had $3.27 in it. Some envelopes would have more. Sometimes there couldn't be an envelope. But they would still come whenever they could until he graduated. Now, when my dad's telling me this story, what he couldn't have known, what he couldn't possibly have imagined, is how much of an impact that story would have on me beyond that moment, and how significant a story would be to me, his son. I've told that story more times than my dad ever has, and to many more people, especially after today. It's a story that has stuck with me and not only affected who I am in this world, but also the people that I get to affect because of it, either through actions or words. Because of storytelling, my Grandma Kay's single poignant act of selfless generosity and incredible kindness still reaches through time and space to this very moment to shape an important part of who I am standing before you now. To live forever is a story. And it's a deeply personal story to each and every one of us. To some of us, what it means to live forever is to be recognized, to have your story told, to have been, to be told you did it, you lived, and you did good. So what is your story? How will you write it? Be the author of your own life and tell the story of you. Scream it every moment of every day. Live it with every breath and action you take. Tell your story and give a voice to the unsung stories of others. The harder it is to tell the story, I promise you, the more everlasting will be its ripples of influence. The impact of a single story is theoretically infinite and compellingly viral by nature. Long after cities shed their scars of bygone eras or a loved one passes away, the stories continue to shape, affect, mold, and change the course of the future. Harness that, and you will change the world. Before today, you didn't know my grandma, Grandma Kay. She's not famous. She never owned a business or wrote a book. She lived a fairly simple life as a mother of 5 and housewife almost entirely in rural Nevada. And yet, she's changed the lives of every single person in this room. Because to me, she hasn't aged a day in over 30 years since she passed away when I was just 3 years old. And she's the one who continues to teach me how to live forever. As Carl Sagan once said, to live in the hearts we leave behind is to never die. My Grandma Kay lives forever. Not just because she put $3.27 in an envelope and sent it to her son. She lives forever because her story was well told. Dad, thank you. Thank all of you.